some of our audience probably has some questions at this point. So if you guys have any questions that you want to ask our speaker here, Mr. Swee Yong, about any topic related to real estate or the future of real estate or technology, please, please you can chat in or you can let us know. We'll turn the mic on and you can ask the question.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Chhayleang and Mr. Swee Yong, for this session. I have a few questions. I already asked one earlier, but I would like to get some clarification on that. We started talking about retail and the impact of COVID and technology in retail businesses. I had the feeling, maybe I missed a bit. I had the feeling that the discussion was focused on shopping malls and like big area shops. I would like to know what is the impact or whether it will affect differently or not on smaller businesses. So not just thinking of big shopping malls, but how will this mean that we will have less small businesses because of COVID and technology? Will small businesses be surviving or find a way to survive because of technology? And if so, will they still be asking for or like demanding space for retail? So in short, my question would be how this situation of COVID and tech would affect differently or not smaller businesses versus the bigger businesses. And maybe a second question I would like to ask, if I'm allowed, would be, so we've been talking about how COVID now is affecting, so more people are asking or ordering online, and therefore we need to adapt to this situation, etc., or working from home. But I mean, it seems, or I hope, that at some point we will find a health solution, and likewise has happened with other illnesses before. There we found a cure. Now we're experimenting with some vaccines, and it seems it's working. So I believe at some point things will get back to normal in a way. Do you think that maybe the new normality, the so-called new normality, do you think that these impacts that we just commented today will remain even so, or like will this is of course at the much longer term, but will these be affecting us to that extent, in such as having less smaller offices, or willing to have smaller offices if we get a cure for COVID? Sorry if it's too long.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you so much.
I understand your first question better now. In fact, when Singapore had the lockdown last year, and also because you know Singapore is a big has a big tourism market, and our airport is very efficient, not just as an airport for Singaporeans going out or for visitors coming into Singapore. Our airport is very efficient in terms of the transit passengers. So each year we have, before COVID, we had about 19 million people visiting Singapore, but the airport itself was handling 50 million visitors. So there are many visitors who just fly through the airport. They don't get out to Singapore, for example. And so because of COVID, now our airport business is very, very small. The tourism sector, the airlines, aerospace companies, aerospace maintenance, the spare part business, many of them got hit and they don't have a job. But then suddenly, because of the availability of technology, we see that there are many people who are new, for example, home bakers. In the past, if you want to bake, you can bake very well. You may need to start to sell your cookies or sell your bread or sell your cakes. You need a shop front. But today, their shop front is Instagram, their shop front is Facebook. And when they some of them lost their jobs, within 3 weeks, they are starting to bake because they already got their shop front on Facebook and their website and their Instagram ready. And so there were new businesses that started up at home, even without having to go to the shops. But of course, outside, we are now talking about your first question, which is about retail that is outside of the shopping mall. In terms of shop houses, actually, I see that the shop houses are, you see, the shop house mainly is ground floor is retail. And in Singapore, ground floor retail, but second floor and third floor, they are usually office space. And so office now, we are facing a situation of work from home. So there's reduction in the demand for the second and third floor of the shop house. And then because retail itself require people to come to the office, and so they buy something downstairs, or maybe they eat in the retail shop downstairs, and then they are working upstairs on that street. So in fact, the shop house themselves also have been impacted. I'm seeing that in Singapore now. I'm not so sure whether in your Norodom Boulevard or the shop houses, how would they be impacted today. But I expect that probably the retail, the shopfront ones, let's say somebody who is selling clothes, somebody who is selling toys, maybe they have to start moving some of their businesses online. And then the upstairs units, which are offices, if the tenants start to reduce his space demand, then there may be some loss in business. So even the smaller size retail spaces, there could be some negative impact due to COVID and due to technology, e-commerce. Now, then your second question is asking about how long lasting this might be. And I think that yes, with the vaccine and then with a better understanding of the virus, we will be able to go back to something like 2019 where the world is a bit more normal. But there will still be the need by the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer of the company, will still want to save costs. So he will still try to encourage some of his people to work from home, for example. And for business continuity purposes, you want to make sure that your business doesn't get disrupted. You have to put in place a practice where you allow workers to be working from home sometime. So meaning overall, for 1,000 of your workers, on any day, maybe only 900 workers, assuming that now everyone got the vaccine and we are all healthy, no more virus problems, you will still be reducing your office needs so that some people can work from home, so that in case another emergency were to happen, your company is comfortable with working from anywhere. Maybe except for 2 or 3 guys who are handling very confidential documents. So for example, the person who is doing payroll, human resource record keeping, for example, that person, your company's policy doesn't allow him to work from home. But the other people who are dealing not with so much confidential stuff, your company operations will adjust itself so that they can work from home. So overall, yes, when the world goes back to normal, I think the demand for real estate might go back to 90% of normal. But it will not be back to 2019 normal, because now we are already getting used to having a discussion like that online. So it is the same for schools. Once the high school and the universities start getting used to teaching this way, you can in fact reduce the size of the school building, right? The international schools may be in a very expensive location. You can actually reduce the number of classrooms because some of the classes have already moved online. So this new technology together with COVID is going to force us to already make changes in our life and the way we work, so that in fact there will be some reduction in total demand, except for residential. Residential, the demand may be different. Not that there will be a reduction, because we still need a place to sleep. We still need a place to call home, right? But the demand for what type of residential space will change. Do you need to put in a small office bedroom in your home? Do you need one room per person at home? Because like my example, my children were attending school and attending their tests and exam online. At the same time, I'm at home trying to do my work online. So do you need one bedroom per person at home, so that you can all do school from home as well as work from home? So the demand on residential type will change, but I don't think the residential demand will shrink. But other segments such as hotels, office space, retail space, those should shrink.
Thank you very much. Understood.
Okay, thanks. Maybe I can add on a little bit on Lara's first question. So the impact on retail, especially in this point in time, where some of the small shops have been trying to convert themselves online. Like we see the presence of food delivery app like Food Panda, Nyam24 in Cambodia, and many other apps which are currently being in use. Those retail space that used to have a small restaurant on the street are now also having their store online. Like everybody can now order from there, and the restaurant can also cut down some costs from not having to operate in full capacity. Just have someone to cook and packaging the food. So that can also save us cost and allow small businesses to sustain during this period of time. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So thank you for your question. Okay, we have another question here in the chat.
The question from the Pointer page: what is the prediction on trending for housing market in Cambodia? Actually, Cambodia, by looking at the population tree, so how many people in each age group, and usually the population tree, we draw them as an age band, right? By looking at the Cambodian population age band, Cambodia is still a very young population, and many people are around I think more than half of the people are less than 30 years old. So I would say that within the next 10 years, many Cambodians are actually creating new families, getting married, and then producing babies. So because of that trend, I think the demand for housing for 10 years in Cambodia, all the major cities, I think it should still be a solid growing trend. Phnom Penh, Siem Reap, Kampong Cham, another relatively big city maybe. And that is because of the demographic trend, the population tree, right? In Singapore, we are very fast becoming an aging population. There are 50% of the population is below about 45 years old, 50% of the population is above 45 years old. Different from Cambodia, which is 50% below 30 years old. And many are getting married, and after getting married, having baby. So they would need bigger residential units. In Singapore, because we are having more and more retirees, might choose to reduce the size of the property. And then our birth rate has been reducing. And so in my forecast in the book, which my university students work with me to do a spreadsheet to forecast, we think that in the year 2030, which is 9 years from now, the number of people dying in Singapore will be equal to the number of babies born in Singapore. Yeah. So meaning our population
net zero.
Net zero, yeah. So the demand on residential homes will be quite different. So if you read the book in chapters 2, I think I talk a lot about the aging demographics of Singapore. But it is Singapore, so not really relevant to the Phnom Penh and Cambodia residential demand.
Okay, so maybe I add a little bit more on the demand for residential. Like Mr. Swee Yong said, more than 50% of Cambodians are below 30 years old. As the age group where they are looking for, looking to get married, build up a family, buying a new home, and making baby. So this trend will not stop the demand of residential properties, but in a way, because of COVID, there will be some changes in, the type of properties that they want. So instead of looking for a small house, probably they were looking for a bigger units, even they have to travel a little bit far out of the city. So that I think answered the question. But the question is also asked about any government action to take on the unaffordability of the property. So
yes, this part I think we many people have discussed that Cambodia needs a lot of low-cost housing, affordable housing, right? And I think the MLM UPC, the Ministry of Land, they published a paper a few years ago saying that Cambodia as a whole needs another 1 million housing units because of the demographic trends, right? Because people are setting up families and getting married and having children. But the buildings, the residential buildings that have come up are mainly more middle and upper and in the luxury category, right? So yes, there seems to be a mismatch. But now that we are getting more and more comfortable with working from home, and we are able to, maybe your job is in central Phnom Penh, but maybe you are living in Kandal, maybe it is still workable because every week your boss only needs you to go into office 2 days. The other 3 days you are working from your home. So then the home in Kandal becomes the sort of affordable housing because it is much lower cost as compared to if you have to buy a home in the middle of Phnom Penh. So I think there will be some pressure that will be released where the younger people, especially if you are technology savvy and you can work from home with all sorts of different tools, maybe it will release a little bit of that pressure.
Right. So I guess because of the impact on COVID-19, there are some reduction of income as well that even make people find it hard to increase to afford the property in the city. So I think according to some information on the news, there are some projects that aim to provide more affordable housing units. Like we have a few already on the market, one down the south of Phnom Penh, that is a government one, and the other one on the north side of Phnom Penh. So I believe there will be more of these projects in the future.
Yeah, I think probably the Bores would still be very much in demand, but because of if the developer is a good developer and he gives you very good quality internet connection to the Bore. So even if your Bore is a little bit further out, lower price, maybe there will be good demand from younger families as well. So then it becomes affordable, right? But it is because you are living slightly further away from ground zero.
Right.
Okay. The next question about condominium, commercial building, office building, what is the priority need after COVID-19? Actually, in Singapore, I see that our priority need, because of our aging demographics, our priority need is old folks' homes, retirement facilities, maybe co-living space that is for our retirees, people who are more than 70 years old. They can live in a community that is more like a hostel style of living. We probably need a few more hospitals. I would say that would be my priority need. Cambodia is in a completely different situation. So I think your priority need is probably still very much residential, but yeah, middle market residential probably.
Right.
Affordable housing.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think for Cambodia, residential is still a priority need. As you can see, the impacts from COVID-19 is mainly caused to some extent by the place that people stay, like they are living in a very condensed and crowded location, which can easily cause the spread, the transmission of the virus. So, I mean, even if we have the vaccine, people will probably want to move a bit further out and try to find a more open space where they can get a fresh flow of air, I guess.
Yeah. Correct. I think that example is clearest in Hong Kong, because every time they find one suspected case in a condominium block, they will try to test the entire condominium block, or they will try to restrict movements in and out of that block. And it is very inconvenient for the residents there. Okay. The next question is about modern real estate being connected to technology. So will the future of buying and selling property using coins? Yes. So just now we were talking about blockchain, and the blockchain then can be creating different types of coins or different types of cryptocurrencies. Yes, so I think many governments have started to look at how the property titles can be put onto the blockchain as well. And so yes, that is definitely a direction, but the technology is already there. We need the governments to allow it to happen. So it is policy that is not so ready today. Another question. Can you help me share the top 5 worst impacted sectors in Singapore? No, I mean there's no. We only have a few segments of real estate, right? So, our hotels were badly impacted. So there's a lot of government support in funding needed for our hotels. We have got real estate that is in for tourists and attractions type of real estate. Those type of attractions all had some. I mean, for example, even our family karaoke outlets, those are all very badly affected, but they happen to be inside the shopping malls. Our offices are next. Our retail malls are also affected quite a a bit, and retail malls in Orchard Road, which depends on tourists and foreign visitors, those are affected. But there are things that the government is trying to do to try to support these sectors. If we go into a bit more technical discussion, then in fact, when Singapore had the lockdown and then the flow of the business income is uncertain, it means that the landlords are also uncertain whether they are able to collect rentals from the tenants. And some of the smaller tenants close shop, and they close shop and they owe the landlord money. In those situations, in fact, the landlord has got a bank loan from the bank. When the landlord has got a few tenants that close and are owing money, in fact, the bank loan itself might be difficult for the landlord to pay the bank loan. And so the banks can actually be calling the loan back. But in the middle of last year, who would have the money to pay if you started to call the loans back? And so there's this domino effect that can, if the government policy and the banks and the landlords are not working closely together, you can actually cause a very big downward spiral, and you can actually cause a lot of pain in the financial sector and the real estate sectors. So I think the government and the banks, and they managed to hold it together quite well. And even today, when we cannot have the foreign visitors like 2019, the hotels are still holding up pretty well. Somehow with some of the government grants and with the valuation and the bank loan, there's a little bit of give and take, I guess. So that's why things are still steady. Otherwise, we've already been in trouble by today. Yeah. From
that should.
Moses, hi Swee Yong, read your books. Really enjoy your insight. Thank you very much, Moses. Question is, do you think that the property landscape in Singapore has changed permanently with the event of COVID? Has my perspective changed after 2020? Yes, there are many areas that have permanently, we call that, we use the term fracture. Once you have fractured a bone, the bone can be healed back, but it will never heal back to original. There will be a sort of a joint, right? So for example, in the tourism industry, we probably suffered a massive fracture. Many of the people who used to be tour guides or who used to be the ones arranging the tours for the large groups to come to Singapore, the guys who are running the conventions and exhibition center, for the whole year, there wasn't a convention, so they have not practiced their skills. And if the business has reduced, many of them have actually taken on jobs elsewhere. And so many of our tourism people, because they are in the service industry, they can easily take on a course, and now they are in the healthcare services industry. So for example, some of our airlines cabin crew, they have shifted over to become healthcare workers. They are working for hospitals, for example. Then when tourism starts to recover, how do you bring that person outside from who is now working in a hospital? You ask them to join back the tourism sector. So it is difficult. This is what we mean by a fracture. When tourism starts to recover, you then have to retrain a group of younger people, fresh graduates from university, to train them to learn how to handle tourism business again. And so there will be a slowdown. So the few clear-cut examples, conventions and exhibitions, hotels, the airline industry, people who have left, will not be so easy for them to come back. And this work from home situation is going to impact Singapore because we have more than 1 million people working in Singapore who are expatriates or who are foreign workers. of that, we have maybe about 400,000 foreign workers who are at the top, who are relatively senior. These are people who are getting salaries of more than 4,000 US dollars a month. This more senior group of foreigners, can they also work from home? Meaning maybe this gentleman, he is a banker from Jakarta, Indonesia. He can be working in Jakarta instead of living in Singapore to do the same work, right? And so then he doesn't need the residential property in Singapore that he is renting. So in the last 3 years, he was paying $5,000 a month to rent. Now, because of work from home, he is able to do his work from his own home in Jakarta. He doesn't need to be posted to Singapore. So there will be a structural change in demand for some of these little niches within the residential market as well. Okay, I think I've talked too much already.
Yeah, I think you've got to cover a lot of good insights for our audience today. And for our audience who want to learn more or want to follow Swee Yong, or you want to get a copy of his book, you can probably go online or you can contact to our team at Pointer. We have some hard copy book available here in Cambodia. And all the money that the book, coming from the book, Swee Yong will donate to the people who are infected by COVID-19 in Cambodia. So thank you very much for that. So maybe you want to speak a little bit more about the book.
The book is starting off with talking about the technology and technology impact on real estate, then also together with how COVID is forcing us to change and forcing real estate sectors to change. But there are certain parts of the book which I think may not be so applicable to Cambodia, and that section 2, for example, is talking about Singapore's public housing. We are facing our own challenges in terms of the 99-year leasehold of our public housing segment. So that's in section 2. There is also certain parts will be relevant about retail or about office space, co-working space. That will be relevant. But there is another part, the final chapter, chapter 23, I think, is about the transfer of wealth from one generation transferring to another and having real estate as part of the wealth transfer. I think because Cambodia is still a very young country, but maybe over the next 10 to 20 years, some of the older business owners, they would start to be thinking about how they want to transfer their wealth. So as property agents, and some of us are financial planners, together we would have to advise our customers how they have to plan for the transfer of wealth to the next generations. So there are, I think, maybe about 70% of this book should be relevant to Cambodia readers, and maybe 30% are very specific to Singapore.
Okay, so thank you very much. So I think we come to an end of our discussion today. Once again, thank you very much, Mr. Swee Yong, for your time, and thank you all the audience for spending your Saturday afternoon joining our podcast. We hope to bring you more interesting topics in the future, and more discussion that are relevant and that could offer more advice to real estate investment. Yes, any other questions? Oh, we've got one more question, right? Sorry. We seem to have another question from our Facebook audience. We cross-post this on Facebook, so we couldn't see on Zoom, but we actually have people asking on Facebook. What is the question?
The question from Facebook is asking what suggestion for hotel sector to transform and adapt to uncertainty of COVID.
Okay.
Yes, hotels need to probably overhaul themselves a little bit more. I mean, just now we started talking about how the retail buildings need to reorganize and renovate in order to accept all the delivery of food, for example. But hotels themselves, now the small hotel rooms and staying very near to each other, that type of a situation, the customers in future may be worried about this type of a design. So hotels, if they are undergoing renovation, would probably need to have wider corridors. You would also need to have better soundproofing in the rooms. And hotels can also start to do some business where they are offering the hotel rooms during the day, maybe as a business use room, because if let's say my family has got too many people and all of us are working from home, I need to have a quiet room today to make a presentation for 2 hours to my big customer, or I need to present this quarter's financials to my chairman. Perhaps I can rent a hotel room for 2 hours where I get nice soundproof quality, and then I can do my presentation peacefully without getting disturbed. So hotels have to start looking at these additional types of businesses. And the transformation and the upgrading is something that I'm very keen about. That's why I have also signed up and started on my PhD research on the subject of urban regeneration. So thank you for the question on that. Yes, the hotel segment has got to start to renovate themselves to adapt to new businesses.
Right.